All right, everybody, this is Ross. I thought in today's video we would talk about my garden plans for 2022. If you're interested and you want to follow along with me, you can view my spreadsheet here in front of me, which details out my garden plans, and you can have that up in front of you as we go throughout this video. It's just down in the description of the video. You can find the link there to my spreadsheet, which is accessible to anybody, and you'll see the garden plan sheet there at the bottom. We're going to go through in this video not just everything I'm growing, but we're going to talk about the varieties as well. I think I've gotten a pretty good handle on some varieties and things I really, really like for this location here in the Philadelphia area. It's always, I think, really interesting, no matter where you live, though, to hear some recommendations that people have of what they're going to grow and for what reasons. For me, at least, my reasoning and my perspective this year has dramatically changed from last year, because last year we really were on the experimenting front. You know, last year I tried in the summer garden here, which you can see right here. This is the summer garden. It's about 10 feet wide by 17 feet deep. We grew last year 50 different varieties of tomatoes just in that location. We also grew a number of cucumber plants. We also grew 20 different varieties of melons. And then behind it, in this raised bed section here, we grew tons of peppers. We had tomatillos. We had eggplants, all the nightshades that you can think of. And it was a really successful year. I harvested a ton of food, and it was a great example, I think, of how much food you can grow in a really small space. I grew a lot of things vertically, and that's how I was able to accomplish such a feat. I think the difference, though, this year is that I really want to focus on the food that I eat, and the food that I eat a lot of, and what are the better performers, and that we're going to give me an easier harvest that also will give me the flavor that I'm looking for in my food. So, you know, if just to actually show you guys how this all works, is that there's a key here, and that every box within the spreadsheet represents 1 square foot. So I've labeled this out in feet wise, and that way it's really easy for someone like you or me to follow along with when I'm planting, when I'm planning this whole thing out. It just makes everything so much more organized. I highly recommend you guys create yourself a spreadsheet like this if you're interested. You can even copy this whole thing, and you can go to File here when you open this up and just go File, Make a Copy, and that will actually import this whole thing, this entire spreadsheet I have, into Drive for you. And you can delete the rest of the sheets if you want, and then keep this one and modify it to your liking. I think it's just a fantastic way, as I said, to get this this whole thing organized. So, all right, so we talked about that, and then, you know, just to recap or just to explain a little bit further, is that, you know, the food that I eat nowadays is really largely brassicas, sulfur-rich foods, things like onions and garlic and shallots, you know, the broccolis, the cabbages, the Brussels sprouts, you know, all the brassicas you can think of, kohlrabi, et cetera, et cetera. I try to eat nowadays a very sulfur-rich diet, simply because I'm trying to promote my levels of glutathione in my body. I think they're really good for detoxification. I also think, in general, brassicas are really good at modulating your hormones. So for me, at least, I feel the best when I eat these foods, and I really do. I eat a bowl. I'm not even kidding, a pretty darn big bowl of broccoli or Brussels sprouts almost every morning, or it's the first meal of my day around, you know, 1 o'clock. I'll eat an entire bowl of those foods. So for me, that's really what I like to focus on. You know, I eat a lot of vegetables now in my diet. I still eat a lot of fruits. I eat, you know, various types of meats, but most of my diet is going to be in that brassica family, and they're really tough to grow, which is why you can see here it's the biggest thing on this list. It takes up the most space. You know, I think in the past it's been difficult to grow simply because we have warm summers. If you don't get the broccoli plants off to a good start when you start your seeds, you grow them out for 3 to 5 weeks and then transplant them in the garden at the right time, here around, March 15th, April 1st. You could maybe even get away with March 1st if you get a nice warm period there. But if getting that seed starting transplant has just been my troubles. Whether that's from not enough air in my seed starting mix, whether that's from my greenhouse environment that's usually too warm, maybe I don't start my seeds early enough. Maybe things are too dry in the soil in these seed plants, seed plants in these trays that I'm using, et cetera, et cetera. We've taken a very different approach this year with the seed starting, and I think some of my efforts hopefully will pay off. And so far, so good with the broccoli plants. So that's just a kind of a overview. I'm still going to grow all my favorites. Things like tomatoes and eggplants and melons and fennel. I love fennel. My stir fries. I love eating peas just right off the plant. I love pickling my peppers. You got my herb garden that's still going to be here with the basil and all these, perennials. I love spinach as well. I love to cook with spinach. So that's another thing I love to eat. I eat a lot of spinach. Also, Mokum carrots. I typically have a lot of carrots in my diet now. I love to saute them in a pan with olive oil and give them some salt, put them on tacos, put them in stir fries, all kinds of things. And then, of course, I really like soybeans in the form of edamame. Having 5 to 6 harvests of soybeans throughout the summer to make myself some edamame is just a really nice treat. Of course, I like the dragon tongue beans and the string beans. I do eat a lot of string beans. So the dragon tongues are mainly for, roasting in the oven or sautéing for a long period of time. And I also just like making pickles, excuse me. I really pickle quite a bit, and the pickles that we've got, even the shishito pepper pickles, are incredible. They just come out so well. So let's talk about the varieties now. That's kind of like what I eat, more than anything. There's not a ton of lettuce on here. I'm kind of moved away from salads. I really, really like arugula for many years. I still do. We're probably going to grow some endive as well. It's not on here. Maybe I'll grow some arugula as well, but for the most part, I'm not really focused on eating salads right now. I don't know. Most of my greens come from the brassicas nowadays. All right, so that's what I'm eating, and that's kind of my reasoning behind this whole thing. Let's talk about variety. So the first thing up here are the melons, and this will just be melons all the way across. And this is a lot of room. Behind it, back in here, are the fig trees. So the figs are going to kind of encroach this area a bit, but I'll probably only grow 1 melon per square foot here. Width-wise, so I'll probably have 10 melon plants grown vertically on a trellis that I'm going to construct with the same way we did it last year with the tomatoes and the melons, with the T-posts in the ground. You have the PVC T's at the top with the EMT pole that goes across, and then from the EMT pole hangs the tomato twine. And I'll just wrap the plants around the tomato twine, and they'll be trellised up vertically. Grisolette, and here's what it is right here on Johnny's. It is a Johnny's, I think, introduction, or I guess they're the ones selling it. I don't know if they created it, but this is basically the hybrid version of Petite Grise de Rennais. And for those of you who don't know, I've been really struggling with growing melons. Whether they get disease, whether I'm trying to graft them, whether I'm then harvesting them and they're just not sweet. That's mainly my issue, is that I get the plants to a point where they put out a harvest, and then the melon is just not very sweet. And it's really, really underwhelming and disappointing, because I think they're one of the best fruits in existence, based on my experience in Japan eating some really high quality melons that were like 10, even some of them could be $100 a piece. So it's really an interesting fruit that I'm desperate to learn how to really master this. So what we're doing is that this Grissolette was definitely the sweetest melon that fruited last year, even though it still really wasn't that sweet. And I think either we don't get enough sunlight or we have too much water in the soil. So we're going to grow all the melons in a raised bed. It'll be very low chance that we have too much soil, but even if we did have too much water in the soil, excuse me, if we had too much water in the soil, I am going to grow some in a container, and I'm going to really limit the water in that container. So we'll be able to rule out the fact that if it's the water or if it's the sunlight, I'll know. So I think the only thing, I think really it's going to come down to the sunlight personally. Just because we really don't get enough sunlight in my yard, and every year it gets lower and lower. Even the summer garden here doesn't even get 8 hours of light. It's probably somewhere in the 6 to 7 hour amount at this point, and it's just not ideal for most of these crops. You know, they really need a lot of light. Broccoli specifically, you know, really needs a ton of light. You can get away with it with the rest of these things, but broccoli and melons are going to be my biggest challenges here. So that's Grissolette, and you can find it. It's a really expensive seed, but I ordered another packet of it to see if we could really, you know, this, believe it or not, was not only the sweetest, but it was also really one of the least diseased. So I think this one probably will just perform better than most of the heirloom melon seeds that I picked up and we're trialing. And it will also just taste among the best. So I'm just going to stick with this one and try to grow this one to perfection if I can. Let's move on to the tomatoes. I know it's a popular thing. We got different categories, the paste tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes, the salad type tomatoes, and the beefsteaks. Still got my solid 4 favorites, right? My favorites for those 4 categories is the black cherry, the pink brandywine from Sudeth, the green zebra is the salad type tomato, and then the orange banana is my favorite paste. But last year we grew 50 different varieties, and there were some that really impressed me. I want to grow them again and really kind of narrow that down, or maybe add some, so we have, you know, 4 favorites, but I'm growing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's about 13 or 14 tomato plants. I don't think I want to grow that many varieties. There's 13 or 14 different varieties. I'd rather just kind of stick with whatever is my favorite of each category, or maybe add something extra. Like in the beefsteak category, it probably makes more sense to grow not just, you know, pink brandywine, but also the pork chop or the white tomaso as a white tomato. You know, have a bicolor like black pineapple. But in terms of paste, I'd rather just stick to one. And, you know, I really realized actually that black cherry is such a great tomato for overall. Like, you can eat it fresh right off the vine. It tastes amazing. It tastes like a beefsteak. It makes great sauce. You can cook with it. It's just unbelievably productive, disease-free, problem-free. It fruits from, you know, day 1 of the tomato season to the very end of the season, even up until frost. It's just insane, that plant. But, you know, in terms of the paste tomatoes, this one here impressed me last year with the trial that we did. It's called Canestrino de Luca. This one, my friend Raphael recommended it to me. I think this is a very tasty tomato. It makes a fantastic sauce. My only beef with it is that it just doesn't perform well. So if you're somebody who's not in a dry place, I probably wouldn't grow this. But it is, if you're trying to make really good sauce, this one makes really good sauce. So we'll see. Here's the black cherry, as we mentioned. Again, amazing performer, super tasty. It just does. It has everything you would want. Here's the Sudeth strain of Brandywine. At least I think that's what Baker Creek sells nowadays. You could also get it on Fedco. Here's the orange banana, and this is, you know, what Amy Goldman, I read in her book, she recommended is really making the best paste, the best sauce. This person said makes the sweetest dried tomatoes ever. That's interesting. Grows it exclusively for drying. That's awesome. It's a very fruity, acidic, great tomato flavor sauce. It just is overall very, very good tomato. Here's the 10 Fingers of Naples. This one also impressed me in terms of sauce. I'd like to grow them all again just to really get a handle on which one really did make the best sauce. I don't know if I came to a conclusion. We tried so many sauces last year of just pure tomatoes. I made, so many batches of, a batch of 10 Fingers, a batch of the San Marzano, a batch of, Frank's Iranian, so many tomatoes. And at the end of it, I was like, I don't even know which one's the best, So I want to now that I've narrowed it down, I really want to figure this one out. This one did perform very well, if I recall correctly, last year. It's a good performer. Maybe had a little bit of blossom end rot at the end of last year. Probably need to put some lime and gypsum down. I should remember that. Frank's Iranian. This one produced a lot of tomatoes last year. This one is a very good performer. Also makes a very good sauce and cooks well. I would put this in a category like the black cherry. As if I was going to grow maybe one tomato and that was it, this would be up there in a choice. Oddly enough, this one does not have that nipple that the other tomatoes had that I thought were all very, very similar to each other. This one actually is quite distinct from the other tomatoes I grew last year. If you guys recall what I'm talking about, there was a number of paste tomatoes that were basically the same thing. All Italian heirlooms. Excuse me. The green zebra. This is again my favorite salad type tomato. It's just fantastic for its acidity. It's just insane. It has the most acidity out of any tomato I've tasted. I think it's really, really good. Pork chop. I thought this was a very similar tomato actually to the green zebra, but different, and in its own way, actually very good. It has a similarity, like I said, but it's in its own category, and I think it's still right up there with the green zebra. It's really impressive. And they're a beefsteak rather than. And it does have a hint of citrus. It's quite acidic. It is the best yellow tomato. I mean, that's what Brad Gates says. It is the best yellow tomato. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was bred with green zebra. White Tomasol. This has been on some people's lists of their favorite tomato. I think it's actually extremely good. I was really impressed by this. It even produced really well, and I even made it into some sauce. The sauce didn't make it, but it's a decent beefsteak, decent performer, excuse me. And has a white, it's a white tomato, similar to this pork chop in a way, as I would kind of categorize it, that just gives you a really different flavor that you can't find in many other tomatoes. Here's Goose Creek, and this was, I heard a lot about this tomato this time last year, and it is probably the tomato I've tasted with the most amount of tomato flavor out of any tomato I've ever had. It is just straight tomato, in your face, awesome flavor. It doesn't taste like pink brandywine to me. It's just got that classic tomato flavor, I think, and it makes a fantastic sauce. We made it in a sauce. It's unbelievable how tomato flavored that is. Black Beauty. This one, it's just for something different. Something impressive in the beefsteak world. I think it tastes good. It's rich. It's earthy. It's got some fennel in it. It really does. It has like some licorice flavor. And the Ananas Noir, the black pineapple, this is the best bicolor I've tried so far. So we're going to grow this one again. I think it'll be somewhat of a nice comparison, but nowhere in the comparison realm as we did last year with the tomatoes. That was crazy. So moving on, here's some broccoli that I've chosen. This has been recommended by some commercial growers in my area, and I think this is just a very good variety that's reliable and should make my life a lot easier when growing broccoli. So this is just a great variety for planting at any time. Does well in the fall and the spring. Excited to try it and see how it does. The other one here is Happy Rich. This is a different type of broccoli, which you don't have to pinch it, but It says it's not necessary, but probably recommended that you take off the the top of it, the tip of the broccoli, and you can harvest this main spear that comes up from the head. And it's a very small main head. Once you harvest that, it starts sending up lots of side shoots throughout the summer. It doesn't, bolt, obviously, because those side shoots, or it does bolt, I guess, but those side shoots, you just keep harvesting them, and they're really, really good. So it's a great plant. I've grown it in the past, but I haven't had great success for, obvious reasons of my broccoli troubles, but looking forward to it. There's even a nice little video here on it you can watch, and look at that. That's just so good. I just love broccoli, especially these spears. Broccolini is just like, out of this world. I love that stuff. Then we got the sugar snap peas, but you know what? In the past, I've always grown sugar, and I still have a ton of seed of it. And you can see over here, by the way, kind of forgot to go back to this, but the snap peas, we always grow them in the cool loving bed, the shadier bed. This area here gets a few hours less of sunlight than the summer garden over here. So this is a different bed that we plant the spring crops in and the fall crops in, and the snap peas do really well here. With the lack of light, it doesn't seem to really bother them, and perform super well, but it's low growing, produces early. I love the flavor. But this year I said, you know what, I want to try growing peas on a trellis. Growing peas that last a bit longer in the season, and that was kind of what I settled on here, was this this sugar snap, which is apparently the most flavorful variety of sugar snap peas, which is a nice little bonus. The vines are 72 inches with 1 or 2 pods per node, and yields well over a long season, both hot and cold weather. That's really impressive, because the sugar and season is quite short. And I'd rather, see what this one's about. I've never grown peas vertically. The sugar and is just, you kind of plant them so close together, and they just form like a carpet of peas, and it's low. It's not anything like this. So I'm really interested to see. Look how big those plants are, and numerous the peas are. Like, I don't get nearly that many peas. So we're gonna set up a trellis system here, probably similar to the one we're doing for the melons and the tomatoes. Very similar situation with the T-posts and the EMT poles and the PVC and the tomato twine. The broccoli is going to go here in the center. I'm probably going to space the broccoli probably about 18 inches apart. Every tomato plant is getting 1 square foot. They do really well like that. I don't know where I'll space my peas. Probably 4, maybe a little bit less. If I do 2 pea seeds per start, I'll probably space them about 4 inches apart, maybe 4 to 6 inches. And I'll do it all the way down this row here. All right. The next one here is the Mokum carrot. We mentioned this, but these are really, really tasty carrots. I don't even mind just leaving them in the ground. This is kind of the size you're supposed to harvest them at. Carrots just do extremely well here. They're so easy to grow. The biggest problem is just germinating them, and I don't really have that issue. So if I plant them early enough in the season, I can get carrots pretty much all year, and then even seed some in the fall and have them in the winter, or I could even leave some in the ground from the spring planting, and I can harvest some in the wintertime. It's just really awesome how easy it is to grow carrots, and cooking with them. Like I said, I do that all the time. The next crop here is an Ethiopian blue mustard. This one's a really good recommendation. This one's rather new to me. If you want something new, I would highly recommend you try this. It's not even really, I would say, a mustard. I wouldn't classify it as a mustard. I'd classify it as a brassica or a kale. It says here, Ethiopian blue mustard, aka Highland kale. I think Highland kale is probably a better name. It's very tender. Um, it says harvest the tender main shoot with 8 to 10 leaves, and the lower shoots will grow out for second, third, and fourth harvest. Cold hardy will grow throughout the winter. I even see this as like not growing them for shoots, but even just growing them out as like a lettuce crop. Um, Growing them out to a certain size and then just cutting them all and taking off all the leaves. I think the leaves are really, really valuable. I'm not so interested actually in the spears. I don't even remember if I've even had the spear. Um, I probably should start these indoors, but if I even direct seed them in the ground and grow them as like a lettuce crop, it's actually really easy to grow them and get them like that. I guess that's why if I started them indoors, I'd probably get the spears. They do bolt rather quickly, so I think that's definitely recommended. Start them indoors. So here's the beans. We're moving on to the beans. The dragon tongue bean is just, I think, will always be one of my favorites. It just actually tastes really good. This coloring and stuff is nice and interesting, but it produces extremely well. Even in not a ton of light, and the beans taste great. They're really, really nutty. I think that's my favorite part about it. What other beans do we have? Let's make sure we get the beans in. So the soybean here is the Chiba Green, and I've talked about Chiba Green for years, but I'm telling you, are super, super productive plants. Large beans, that's for sure. It says here, picking can be staggered over a 10-day harvest window, and they ripen from the bottom to the top. Yeah, they do. So, and they don't take a ton of space either. These plants are pretty vertical, compact with their fruiting. You can space the plants very close. They're still going to produce really well. I don't know. For me, Chiba Green just makes a ton of sense. And even growing them, by the way, in this lower light environment. And what's going to happen here is that these crops will finish at some point in the summer, and then I'll plant these in their place. So this goes right in here in the summer, and then I follow that up right after these come out. I follow up with another crop for the fall. So the last bean here is the Kalima bean. The Kalima bean is my favorite French bean. So I'm actually going to buy these. I haven't ordered them yet. Last year I went with a different variety of French bean that was supposed to be very tasty, but I'm telling you, I would really, honestly, hard pressed to think that there's a French bean that tastes better than these. They're insanely good. They're also very productive. I just think these are out of this world. I really should start saving my own seed from these, because I was just very, very impressed. Every year, I've grown them for many years, and I switched because I couldn't get these seeds anymore. Or actually, I think I wanted to grow a seed that was a little bit cheaper, because you only get 40 seeds for $3. What I really should just do is save my own seed. Okay. So in terms of eggplant, I really like this variety called Ping Tung. It does really well here. It's a better variety. It's shorter amount of days. It's a hybrid. It just does well in poorer climates like mine that don't have a long enough season. We don't get enough heat. It's just not the best eggplant climate, and this one just does really well. It does. It produces a lot, and I like the shape, because then you can cut them in lengthwise and make eggplant fries. But this year I'm not doing Ping Tung. I decided to go with Fairy Tale. We'll see how this one works out. I think I grew it one year. No, I actually ate these a number of years ago, because someone I knew worked in connection with a farm, and the farmer there nearby grew this particular variety, and it did really, really well for them. So I know it produces well. I know it should do well here. 65 days, not the 59 as Ping Tong, but it should do pretty darn good. Should produce well. The cucumber I like to grow is the National Pickling Cucumber. There must be a better variety than this, but it just produces really well. Maybe I should try to find myself maybe a hybrid version of this that produces better than others. I don't know what the best producing one, but this even tastes great. I pickle them. The pickles are still good right now. They're still crisp. It's just a great overall pickling cucumber. I mean, the amount of cucumbers I got last year by growing these plants vertically was insane. Absolutely crazy. And it even outproduced the open pollinated version of cucumber I grew called the Bait Alpha. Bait Alpha cucumber, which, if you read here, it says, I think it's open pollinated. It's parthenocarpic. Yes, it's not open pollinated. It's the wrong word. It doesn't need it self pollinates. That's the word. So it every flower turns into a cucumber, and it's just super productive. But for me last year, actually, the National Pickling Cucumber outproduced it. I was really shocked to learn that. This Bait Alpha, though, is extremely tasty for eating them fresh, or just a general, non-pickling sense. The fennel I'm going to grow is the Zephafino, but you know what? There's probably a better variety, honestly. I don't know. I do just like the Florence type fennels where they bulb up. That's what I'm interested in. And it says here, overcrowding induces premature bolting. So I don't want to be interesting. I don't want to put these plants in, multi-sown. That was my plan, was to grow them multi-sown. Is to have multiple fennel plants in one container, and then transplant that in. I guess that's a bad idea. So with this variety anyway, so I'll just thin them out and do one plant per planting. And then what you can do is after you harvest, you just leave the plants in there, leave the roots in there, and then it'll send up new shoots, and those actually turn into bulbs as well. At least, I don't know if it wasn't this variety, but some other variety I used in the past had done that exceptionally well. So maybe I should find out what variety that was, because that was a great year for harvesting fennel. The Takara shishito pepper. This is the pepper I'm going with. No more of this crap. I think, honestly, the hybrids have just way impressed me. I think before, a lot of the hybrid vegetables and hybrid seeds that you might find just lacked in the flavor department. But they're really realizing nowadays that there's a market for that, of having a hybrid version of the plant that produces well, performs well, disease resistant, just has all that hybrid, check boxes checked. But it also has the flavor that you're looking for. So this one, for me at least, I don't know if I've had a better pepper. I'm going to be honest. These are insanely good. Pickling them is mind-blowingly good. I just think they're out of this world. So for me, that's it's worth trying. They produced really well last year too. I don't really see a reason to grow any other peppers. Maybe there's probably even a better variety than this of shishito pepper, but I don't know, why mess around with it. They just do so well. And then I guess to wrap it up, this is one recommendation I would highly highly recommend that you guys try this. It's leaf broccoli. So you could call it spigariello, cavolo, broccolo, spigariello. So this is just broccoli that isn't harvested for the head. You harvest it for the leaves. And I'm telling you, this is way better than growing kale. This is way better than growing chard. This is way better than growing collard greens. This is where it's at, right here. This Italian seed company, or wherever this comes from, really, really knew what they were doing. And I would highly, highly recommend you guys try it. It does need some space. I don't think you get nearly as much food out of the same space as you would, Swiss chard or maybe even kale. But in terms of flavor, it's incredible. I guess you could even cut off the top and then send out side shoots with have more leaves on them. And the leaves, the stems here and the leaves, you can, if the leaves are quite small and aren't nearly as full sized as some of those, you can eat the stems, and they're not as tough to eat. So it's not like kale though at all, where the stem in the middle is like, really got to avoid the stem. It's a very, very good crop. And here's actually a photo of the broccoli I made, the leaf broccoli. I had some, what are these? Anchovies. And my recipes right here is just basically olive oil, salt. You lightly saute them in a pan with olive oil and salt. And then I added in there some lemon juice and pesto that I made from my own basil. And that really brightens the, it's just a crazy richness of sulfur. Just that broccoli flavor from the brassica family, that kale flavor. It really brightens that up, that lemon specifically. And yeah, it's just fantastic. I don't know. If anyone, that'd be my one recommendation for this video. That and the Ethiopian blue mustard. Those are two weird ones I don't think most people know about. I would definitely try those. If you're going to try something new, that's what I would try. Yeah, other than that, there's not really a ton on here in terms of like, squash. I'm not really growing any squash, winter or summer squash. I feel like I can just buy some summer squash and be all right if I cook with it. I don't really cook with it though. Winter squash, I don't really eat a ton of it. And also I don't have the room to be growing stuff like that. I'd love to grow winter squash. I'd love to be growing onions. I'd love to be growing my garlic. Didn't plant my garlic this year. I just had too much going on this fall. I would love to grow shallots. I'd love to grow all the alliums, leeks. I would love to grow potatoes. I don't have enough light for potatoes or onions. The bulbs and the potatoes themselves just don't really get that large. So I think it's really critical to grow whatever you eat, and also that just works here. I'd love to grow corn. Don't really have enough room for corn. Look how small my garden is, and it's just getting smaller, and also it's getting less and less light. So challenges, right? And I'd rather get good at these two crops specifically, fennel, broccoli, also the melons. If I can just get that right, the rest of this stuff is so easy. It's like a guarantee that I'll get a good harvest. It is a guarantee. I'd have to be, you'd have to really have the worst green thumb ever. I don't even know. If you just had my soil and you planted some seeds in the ground, the majority of this will work. Like you can just plant some pickling cucumber seeds in the ground with the right soil in this particular spot. You just can't fail. There's no way you can fail. I don't do anything to these plants. The majority of these things, I could just put them right in the ground and be all right. Spinach, I'm starting that indoors. That's a challenging one in terms of having a transplant. Even the tomatoes, you could direct seed the tomatoes. I In fact, I am going to direct seed the tomatoes, the eggplants, and these peppers. They're going to be direct seeded into underneath the low tunnel. The same thing with the melons, because we are going to set up the low tunnel and get that warmth ready so that we can get a nice head start to the season. So around April 1st, April 15th, I think it may be around April 1st, we're going to set up the tunnels. Very shortly after that, plant the seeds. And they'll germinate super well. They're going to grow really well. And by the time it's May, my frost is over, the plants will be insane in terms of how far along they are. The one thing I guess you kind of have to worry about is the wind, but I guess it would be nice if if I'm going to have them trellised, it's not going to really matter with the wind. It would be nice, I guess, to have a melon transplant and then transplant that in a bit deeper, and then that way the melon plant isn't blowing around everywhere in the wind. I may think about that one a bit more. So, but yeah, that's it, guys. They do really well when I direct seed them. All the nightshades and the melons, the heat-loving crops, the cucumbers. Just direct seed them right in the ground underneath a low tunnel. It's fantastic how well they do. For the rest of this, not doing the tunnels, we're just going to cover them with fleece, with Agribond, and that'll work out really well. Same thing over here. Direct seed them or transplant them in, and then cover them with fleece. This actually here is there's a cold frame here, and I may just throw the cold frame over top, and that'll work out really well, because for some of this I could actually plant in the first, right after this cold front goes away that's coming in tonight and tomorrow. As soon as that goes away, I put the cold frame right over top, and then I can direct seed basically right into that tunnel or into that cold frame, and have a very early crop of peas and spinach. But again, I don't really have to. Either way, it'll work out. So yeah, thanks for watching this video, guys. What are you guys growing this year? There's a lot of things down here you might notice, that tomatoes and melon varieties I still would like to trial and grow in the future, but again, that's kind of my perspective. What's your perspective? What are you growing, but also what was your approach, and why are you doing that this year? I'd love to hear it. We'll see everybody soon, okay? Hit that subscribe button. Take care, guys.